Sound off in the beginning, we ain't losing, we back to winning. Hometown love, been repping from the start. Nothing but Niners, red and gold in my heart.
What's going on, faithful? This is your boy Mike from the Nothing But Niners crew. And today, Nick and I are joined by a great guest, my man Grant Cohn. But before we get to Grant, Nick, how you doing, my man? What's going on, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Just chilling, man. Putting out a lot of stuff. Hope everybody's following us. If you're not, you know where to find us. Nothing But 9ERS on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram. We're everywhere. So if you don't follow us yet, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button on YouTube as well, and check us out. But we got a great guest today in Grant Cohn. What's going on, Grant?
Not much. What's going on with you guys?
Same old, man.
We're really anxious to discuss this piece that you put out, man. First, for the people who don't know, and I doubt that anyone doesn't know, but Grant is are you technically a columnist or a writer?
I'm an online columnist for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat.
There you go. What's the difference between a columnist and like a beat writer?
Well, a beat writer typically reports news, and a columnist typically writes opinions. I cover the team daily, so I am sort of a beat writer, but I write 2 columns a week, which is mostly opinion writing. So,
gotcha.
Beat writers down there don't do that.
Yeah. All right. And that's good. And that's what we were recently discussing something along those lines of how beat writers have to kind of stay, within a narrative. You're never going to see anything negative, so to speak, coming from a beat writer. And so that's what people have to understand, the big difference between a columnist and a writer. You guys are paid for your opinions. It's not just a matter of, follow the team and be as positive as possible.
I also don't like the terms positive and negative, because to me, that just, if you're being positive or being negative, that means you have no integrity. I mean, you need to, if you're giving your opinion, it needs to be how you really, really feel. Because right. if you're like pro Niners or pro, and then all of a sudden you get a new job in Cleveland, then all your opinions change because now you're, you know what I'm saying? Like, say you were pro Raiders or anti Raiders, they move to Las Vegas, then you get a new job in Las Vegas. Now you're going to be pro Raiders if they're coming to your town. So I feel like you need to be, you really feel, and that's, if that's positive, like, look at it.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get into this, man. The most latest piece that you put up, well, the one that got my attention, is comparing Brian Hoyer's past 17 games to every other NFL quarterback's past 17 games. This was extremely interesting. It says here that San Francisco 49ers starting quarterback Brian Hoyer played 17 games the past 2 seasons, 6 for the Chicago Bears in 2016 and 11 for the Houston Texans in 2015. Here are his stats from those 17 games. 62.8% completion, 4,051 yards, 7.1 yards per attempt, 25 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, with a quarterback rating of 93.7. And that's good for a surprising 11th on this list. And that's sorted by quarterback rating. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, man, I saw this, and the fans are so split right now between, is Brian Hoyer worth it? We suck. We shouldn't have picked him up. We should have kept Kaepernick.
Right.
I mean, I want to get your thoughts on this and what you were hoping to accomplish by putting this piece out.
Well, I think most 49er fans are understand that Hoyer played well the past 2 seasons for the Texans and for the Bears. But I just wanted to put the numbers together and see exactly how well he played. 17 games exactly, and I just wanted to compare those 17 games to every other quarterback's last 17 games. So it took a few hours of, compiling the numbers together. And I was so surprised to see that Hoyer ranked above a lot of good quarterbacks. I mean, clearly because of his 2015 season, but Hoyer ranked above Alex Smith, which really surprised me. I mean, a few weeks ago, I would have thought that the Niners would love to have a quarterback like Alex Smith right now instead of Hoyer, but for a few reasons. But looks like Hoyer, I mean, he clearly put up better numbers the last 2 years, and you can't just write it off by saying, well, Hoyer played with good players, because he really didn't. I mean, he played with DeAndre Hopkins, he played with Alshon Jeffrey, but I mean, Alex Smith played with a great defense. A lot of these quarterbacks play with good players, so you can't just write off Hoyer as being any type of his surroundings. He played on some bad teams. He played on a bad team last year and actually was better than he was in 2015, which was interesting. I mean, he took a step up last year. He was significantly better. He was like 6 touchdowns, I want to say, and no interceptions in 4 or 5 games. So I was surprised at all that. And another thing about Hoyer is when I think of him, I wasn't that familiar with him before the Niners signed him. I feel like most fans, most football followers, when they think of Hoyer, they think of that one playoff game when he was with the Texans and he threw like 5 interceptions, could have been 6 or 7 against the Chiefs, and just melted down in a way that a starting quarterback shouldn't. And I thought to myself, that's not a starting quarterback. It's not starting quarterback material. When you're off, you can be that off. You can't lose a game single-handedly for your team. And one of the nice things about Alex Smith is even on his worst game, when he throws like for about 120 yards, he still gives his team a chance to win by not turning the ball over. So that's what I was thinking, that, the Niners would be interested in him, and maybe next year, if they can't get Cousins, they could get Alex Smith if the Chiefs transition from Smith to Mahomes. But Hoyer, he throws more touchdown passes than Alex Smith. I mean, 25 touchdown passes in 17 games isn't shabby. Did Kaepernick ever do that? I don't know. Also, the 7 interceptions, 17 games is extremely good. And I've been watching him more and more. I watched his games with the Bears. He's pretty good. He almost looks like Tom Brady. It's clear that he played under Tom Brady and studied Brady's mechanics. He looks like he really Brady, and then studied. The thing keeps his feet underneath him when he's going to throw. And 49ers were really used to Kaepernick and even Alex Smith, who a lot of time wants to scramble, gets his feet out of position. Hoyer wants to stay in the pocket. He's fearless. He has a quick release. He's very good on first and second down. He's not that great on third down, but the whole emphasis is to avoid third down anyway. I think he's a really good fit. I'm not sure that they're looking at him to be the guy long term, but I think it's clear from the numbers that I posted that he's definitely the best option they could have got for this year.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. I want to get Nick's thoughts on this because this was a very, very interesting piece. So, Nick, man, Grant just gave us a lot to think about right there. What are your thoughts on it, bud?
Coming into this season, I was and I've said this on numerous pods and videos that we've done, is I'm extremely excited about Brian Hoyer. Your piece just put it over the top for me as well. I think that you don't stay as a backup behind Tom Brady in that system for as long as you do if you're not a good quarterback. I think that he has been hurt. I think his seasons and his career have been hurt by injuries, whether that be because of offensive line type of players that they had. He wasn't on any very, very good teams. Houston, yes, they had a great defensive team, but offensively they weren't that good. Hoyer has proved to me, watching him over and over again, is that he knows how to go through his reads. He's not afraid to take a hit. He'll step up in the pocket. He'll throw it deep if he has to, but he's more of a 7 to 10 yard passer and move the sticks kind of type of quarterback, which we haven't seen here since probably Alex Smith in a while. So I'm super excited about Brian Hoyer, and everybody laughs at me when I say that, but I think that he's going to come out this year and he's going to surprise the hell out of a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Smith wasn't even really a guy who would push the ball beyond the sticks. That's just not part of what he does. He depends a lot on yards after the catch, but Hoyer will sling the ball around, man. Some of the names that were lower than Hoyer in these last 17 games in this breakdown: Andrew Luck, Marcus Mariota, Andy Dalton, Alex Smith, Tyrod Taylor, Phillip Rivers, Carson Palmer, Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco, Colin Kaepernick, Cam Newton. I mean, holy shit. Why? This is my thing. Why hasn't Hoyer stuck around on other teams a little bit longer then? Like, Grant, I want to get your opinion on this. when you go back and you watch it, you can see what the guy is capable of. Every quarterback has a bad game at some point in time. Every quarterback has a multiple pick game, and unfortunately, when you're in the playoffs, that's the one that is burned into your head. That's the lasting impression. But anyone who's smart, anyone who does their research, and I trust that Kyle Shanahan has done so, they'll go back and look at the regular season games or look at what they do, the usual, not just the outset or the outlier. So why hasn't he been able to stick with the team then?
Well, I believe that what he did in Cleveland got him a chance in Houston. He showed good signs in Cleveland. And then when he went to Houston, he played well that season. He got the starting job early in the season and kept it. But what he did in that playoff game was so bad. You can't overstate how bad it was. He really scared off that entire franchise to the point that they convinced themselves that Brock Osweiler was better, even though Brock Osweiler is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league and Hoyer's decent. So he actually gave Houston the wrong impression, set Houston back by going over to Brock Osweiler. Then Hoyer had to become the backup, and then he actually played better in his 5 games in Chicago than he had played the previous season. And make the argument, even though he's in his early 30s, he's still improving. And then he got hurt, which he's gotten hurt a few times. So that's one of the reasons he hasn't really been able to latch on, because he is somewhat injury prone. But I want to come back to what you said earlier, comparing him to those people on the list. You mentioned Carson Palmer. That was the first person I compared him to when I started doing this project a couple of days ago. I think it's fair to say you can make the argument that the Niners have the second best quarterback in the division. I mean, Carson Palmer was good a few years ago, but I think he's done. Ever since he melted down in the playoffs, he's almost has like football PTSD, and he's old. He looked bad last year. I think I would take Hoyer over Carson Palmer right now. And I think Goff looked terrible. I mean, most people think Goff looked terrible last season, and he's got a lot to prove this year. I would take Hoyer over Goff right now. Clearly, Wilson's the best. But for a team that's 2-4, there was 2-14 last year, to have the second best quarterback in the division, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's hard to disagree with that too, because we've been saying for a while that we think that Carson Palmer is done. I don't know if you've ever listened to my guy on Twitter, IMK Diddy. Kenny says all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
He thinks that Carson Palmer is washed. He said it last year. He didn't even say it just this year. Like, he knew, like, going into this season, that this previous season, that Carson Palmer didn't stand a chance. Russell Wilson, definitely is better than anyone else in the division right now. But like you said, I'm confident in saying that I think the 49ers have the second best quarterback in the NFC West. Absolutely. Nick?
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with that, because I completely agree with you. I think that, like I said, I've been on Brian Hoyer's side since we've signed him. I thought that it was a great signing, and I think that Kyle Shanahan can make a huge difference with him, especially the way that Hoyer plays with the play action, and play action is everything about Kyle Shanahan's offense. So
right.
I completely agree with this signing, and like I said, I think that with his experience behind Tom Brady, his years playing in the league, with us drafting a young guy as well as Matt Barkley, I think that he's going to help those two along the way. And I can't even sit here and say right now, and I understand Hoyer hasn't played a snap with us, but I can't even say that Hoyer doesn't get signed to an extension after next year. I can't sit here and say that we go out and we pick up a Sam Donald or whoever that this team, everybody on this team wants. I think that right now he's a bridge quarterback with a chance to prove himself. So I could agree with you on that as him being the second best quarterback in this division right now.
And something else that was interesting about all this, I mean, like I said, the stats that were there, the one that stood out to me the most was a 62.9 completion percentage. And by no means is that like astronomical. You have guys like Sam Bradford who are over 70%. But when's the last time the 49ers had a quarterback who was over 60% completion percentage? It was Alex Smith the year he got benched.
Right.
So that's something that's so exciting, man. It's going to be something that people are going to have to accept, that this isn't the same old typical 49ers team that's going to come out there, and the offense is something that he's familiar with as well. Grant, now at the end of this article, you asked people, let me see it. I'm sorry. It's hard to scroll through here because there's so many comments. By the way, you get a ton of comments on here. The comments are just as entertaining as the pieces that you write. I don't know how you do it. And I see sometimes you go in there and you kind of, you go back, but holy smokes, man, you have to get tired of that, no?
Man, to be a columnist and to put yourself out there with opinions, you got to love it, man. I kind of think of it as like going against the current. Like, you got to take some waves in the face. And if you're afraid to do that, you can't be a columnist. You can't put yourself out there. So I like it. I grew up, my dad was a columnist. He always liked it. I saw that like action. It's almost addicting. I really like it.
Okay, yeah, I get it. So you asked, how do you explain Hoyer's high ranking? That was one of the questions that you asked in here. And I think that Brian Hoyer is, we heard this before I saw this article. It was that Brian Hoyer is going to be Alex Smith just a little bit better. He's cautious with the ball. He makes smart decisions, and he actually knows how to read a defense. And like what Nick said earlier, he actually knows how to go through his progressions. So I think that's how you explain it. Is he a good quarterback, or do these stats make him seem better than he is? I don't understand the perception of Hoyer other than the fact that he just hasn't stuck with a team for a long period of time. And I think that's what scares people off about him. It's like I always said that the people who follow Tom Brady, who left New England, were always looked at as the next guy, the next big thing. Look at what they were doing with Garoppolo. You heard them saying that they wanted a first-round pick for him this year. You look at Matt Castle and all the hype and hoopla that he got. Then there was Ryan Mallett, Brian Hoyer. Everybody who leaves New England, they're looked at as the next guy because he sat behind Tom Brady. Do you think that Hoyer is like the exact opposite end of this? Like, people say, oh no, it's just Brian Hoyer. Like, everyone else seems to get the benefit of the doubt. They've got to be good. They deserve another chance, give them a better chance. But when it comes to Brian Hoyer, people are just ready to discard him. Like, the fans were really literally upset. And I don't think it was just about, oh, we want Colin Kaepernick instead. There were fans legitimately upset that the team went out of their way to get him. So what do you guys think about that?
You go first.
I think because he played with a Cleveland team and couldn't stick there or stay there, as well as move to Houston and the playoff game that he had there, I think, like Grant was saying earlier, has really turned people away from him with the amount of interceptions that he had in that game, and as well as he played that season and then just blew it in the playoffs. So I don't think that he gets the benefit of the doubt from, the same as Ryan Mallett or Garoppolo or, any of those New England quarterbacks that leave. Because if you would tell Niners fans right now that we were signing Jimmy Garoppolo, they would be ecstatic. And in my eyes on that is, I don't understand why. Like, yes, he played 4 games in the NFL. Like, he's also behind a Brady system and, a great football mind like,
right.
Belichick. So, I mean, I don't know. None of us really know what Jimmy Garoppolo is all about other than that New England system. So, I think that he's getting, the bad end of the stick. But like I said, man, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people here this year. And I think that people should jump on board. And I think they will once he starts playing. I think the biggest, we talked about this the other night, I think the biggest downfall we're going to have in the beginning of the season, probably the first 4 games, in my opinion, is just that chemistry between the quarterback and receivers. I think everything else is going to fall into place, though.
I want to come back to something Mike said earlier. He described Hoyer as Alex Smith, but a little bit better. That's an interesting thing to say because Alex Smith takes flack quarterback. He's proven that for years. He's a good back. And if the Niners had him right now, you feel pretty good about the Niners. And if Hoyer's a little bit better, and I think these numbers do show that Hoyer may be a little bit better. The issue with me with Hoyer is big games. how does he perform in big games? How does he bounce back from that playoff performance? He didn't play in a big game last year with the Bears, and he may not play in a big game this year with the 49ers. So it may not be an issue yet, and I think that's the only thing he needs to prove, that he cannot melt down like that, because you can't lose a game single-handedly. Jimmy Jones used to say it's not for a quarterback, it's not about the plays you make, it's about the mistakes you don't make. Because Alex Smith proves it all the time. Even when he's off, when he only throws for 120 yards, the Chiefs can win because he won't turn the ball over. And if your quarterback is throwing 5 interceptions, you have no chance. So that's the only thing he needs to prove, talking about Hoyer, also in staying healthy. But if he can do those things, he can continue to mature and stay away. He's a good quarterback, and I do agree that than Alex Smith.
I'm with you on that. And, I'm looking at this list, man. And if you were to ask fans to give you their top 10 quarterbacks, this list would probably have 7 or 8 of them in that top 10. Mm-hmm. You have Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. You have Kirk Cousins, Sam Bradford. Those are 2 question marks. But I've been arguing with people that I think Kirk Cousins is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. You have Sam Bradford in here. Then you have Matt Stafford. No one denies his talent. Derek Carr. Everyone loves him. Russell Wilson. Ben Roethlisberger. And right outside of the top 10, you have 11 Brian Hoyer and 12 Andrew Luck. I can tell you that a lot of people are going to say, oh, let's flip Andrew Luck with Sam Bradford, and that's a solid top 10 list, right? But Andrew Luck gets a lot of benefit of the doubt. Andrew Luck, for some reason, has this unlimited pass at being a mediocre quarterback or an average quarterback, and people are still donning him the greatest, the next best thing. And I don't quite get it when you see someone like Brian Hoyer. Now, he doesn't put up the yards because they don't pass as much. You know what I mean? On the teams that Brian Hoyer is in, they don't go out there and chuck the ball around the yard a lot. But you look at the numbers, they're right there. They're in front of you guys. I mean, if you're not going to judge a quarterback off of this criteria, the completion percentage, the yards per attempt, touchdowns, interceptions, and QB rating, what else are you judging a quarterback off of? What excuse do people have to say as to why Brian Hoyer isn't really a top 15 quarterback in the NFL? Nick, I mean, I want to get your thoughts. And is it just wins? Is that what people look at? Is that the only thing? Because, again, way at the bottom of this list, and again, this is just the last 17 games, but way at the bottom of this list is Cam Newton. You know, so, and he was just the MVP not too long ago. So if not these numbers, if you're not going to look at what that quarterback does when he has the ball in his hands and when he throws it, what else do you look at? Because you have other people who say, oh, wins is that's just a number. That's a team stat, not a quarterback stat. So what is it that's going to still make people hesitate to say Brian Hoyer is a top 15 quarterback?
I think I touched on it before. I think it's just his history. I think that's the only thing that people would not throw him in there. Because right now you look at and I mean, it's the name. It's, we can sit here and say it all day too. We could say it till we're blue in the face, but the media, also makes quarterbacks who they are. They give them more press coverage or this or that, and people tend to watch more and more, and they see things that they like, and that's how people become fans of quarterbacks, obviously, or they're a big NFL fan. But I really think that Hoyer has really gotten the shit end of the stick with injuries. I really think that's what's held him back. I really think, I mean, he was 7-4 in Cleveland before he got injured. He was on the verge of making Cleveland good again, a decent team. They didn't really have a lot of weapons there. I mean, they did have some weapons because he had a couple good receivers there at that time. But yeah, I think stats, people don't look at stats. They're underrated because if the team doesn't win, stats don't mean anything to a lot of people, But stats is what tells the whole story. I mean, it could be, it's not a one-person game. It is an offense. There is 11 people playing, and receivers make quarterbacks look better, and quarterbacks make receivers look better. So they do work hand in hand. But I don't know, man. I really can't sit here and say, for other people's opinions as to why they wouldn't rate Brian Hoyer as high as he is. But I could definitely agree with Grant and you that it is a shock to see him as number 11 overall over the last 17 games, which is a really, really interesting stat. And if you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you check that out on Grant Cohn's page and Nothing But Niners. We also tweeted it out as well. It's definitely a good read. So.
Well, I think that one issue with Hoyer is even though he has played well the last 17 games, that's still somewhat of a small sample. It's about one season, and there are a lot of examples of quarterbacks who had one good season. So keep going. He needs to keep playing well. And one thing I want to say about him, Mike brought up Kirk Cousins earlier, and you said you think he's a top 5 quarterback. Personally, I disagree. Or I'm not so sure. Top 10, okay. I'm not even so sure if I would put him top 10. I'm not saying he's not, but what I want to say about Cousins is he's had somewhat of the mother lode of talent around him on offense. He had 3 great receivers and a great tight end. But he's about a 500 quarterback. He hasn't gone to the playoffs yet. And, Hoyer's about a 500 quarterback too. I want to say Hoyer's 16 and 15. Hoyer hasn't played with that type of talent around him. And now Cousins this year, he lost Deshaun Jackson, who's a big deal for Cousins. I mean, Deshaun Jackson gives Cousins a lot of space to throw to other people. So it'll be interesting, and he lost Garcon too. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs without those two. Going to be the focus of that attack now. So I think there's a lot of improved this year. And one thing, I predicted the Niners to win 9 games this year. As soon as I saw their schedule, I found 9 wins. Not because I think the Niners are going to be that great, but because I think they have a much better coach than last year and a much easier schedule than last year. So say I'm right in 9 games, and say the Redskins win only 7 or 8. I mean, what did they win last year? 8? 9? They won about 8 games last year. So say, what if there's win more games than the Redskins, and what if the numbers between Hoyer and Cousins are somewhat similar? Do the Niners still go out and replace Hoyer with Cousins for a lot of money? That becomes very interesting. But it's a possible scenario.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The one thing I want to say about what you pointed out, the talent that was around him, and talking about Kirk Cousins, the one thing I want to say is that the talent doesn't make a quarterback always be better. That quarterback still has to distribute the ball. If you look at the 2014 49ers team, when Colin Kaepernick was still the quarterback, you look at, there was Crabtree that was still there. You had Frank Gore still there. Vernon Davis was still there. I believe Delaney Walker was still there. Maybe he was gone that year. I think that was the year Delaney actually left. But there was still a ton of talent. That offensive line was still together. Defense was still intact. And you look at the numbers for that 2014 season for what our quarterback did. That was the year that we went 8-8. There was nothing to write home about. The numbers weren't good at all. And so, yes, the weapons absolutely make a difference. They can make a quarterback look better, especially with big targets like Garcon and the catch radius that he has, and Reed. Those kind of things do absolutely help. But you still have to deliver that ball on time, in stride. You know what I mean? You have to be able to understand when the defense is beating you and things like that. And I think those are some of the strengths that Kirk Cousins has. He might not, might not be the most accurate guy, but he absolutely can read a defense. He might make some bonehead decisions sometimes, but he's there, man. I mean, look, his completion percentage is 67.3 over his last 17 games.
Right.
Those numbers, like I said, those numbers mean something. No, the numbers don't tell a full story, but they absolutely help, tell some of it.
I think it's true. I don't know for certain, but I during the offseason, I looked this up because there was some rumors that the Niners were going to go after Cousins now. And I believe that Cousins' numbers drop significantly when Deshaun Jackson isn't playing. I believe Deshaun Jackson has a big effect on Cousins' efficiency. So all I'm saying is that it'll be interesting to see if Cousins' numbers come back down a little bit average without those two guys that he relied on heavily in Jackson and Garcon. But we'll see.
And I think, and Nick, you can jump in after this, but I think that Deshaun Jackson is going to change the way a defense plays anybody. That kind of speed, you don't want to chance him getting deep into the secondary and one-on-one coverage. You don't want to chance him running past someone. So just his speed, just the one trick that he has is so good that he demands that kind of respect. So, yeah, you would expect that to fall off because I can't tell you the next deep threat on the Redskins. However, you put Kirk Cousins here where you have a ton of speed on this roster now. You look at Marquise Goodwin, who ran one of the fastest 40 times ever being out there. He might not have the catch percentages that Deshaun Jackson has, but I'm falling here. But he definitely has the speed. You know what I mean? So those are the kind of things that help quarterbacks out in the long run.
Right.
Nick, was there anything you wanted to add, bud?
No, and like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say that either or between Cousins or Hoyer are better, because I mean Cousins has had a better last 2 years, obviously, but that's to be seen. I mean, is it to be seen because of the weapons that Cousins had as well? But right now we're talking about stats and we're talking about the last 17 games. So, Hoyer is ranked up there, number 11. So, but yeah, I completely agree with you, Mike. I think that that it's really no comparison right now. We really couldn't tell.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I don't want to take up too much more of Grant's time. I want to let you guys know, for the people who are watching now, we've got a lot of comments going on the side in the chat here, but you guys can check out this article that Grant posted up. It's a really good think piece. The link is below. If you look down below the video here, it's in the description. And you guys give Grant Cohn a follow on Twitter, GrantCohn. He is there, very interactive, has no problem sharing his opinion with you and going back and forth. Absolutely love that about Grant. Controversial at times, not afraid to butt heads with anybody, but you got to respect it. You never shy away from it. I absolutely love that. How do you look at Grant's list and conclude that Hoyer is better than Cam Newton? Well, you got to look at everything there. This is a question coming from Rich Madrid, and it's not that you conclude he's better than him. It's you conclude that as a quarterback, he can do quarterbacking things better. What's not included in this list are things like rushing yards. You know what I mean? So this isn't everything. This doesn't say how teams play that quarterback. Teams aren't going to play Hoyer and leave a spy on him. You know what I mean? They have to do those things for a Cam Newton type of guy. You get what I'm saying? So you have to respect Cam Newton in a way that you don't have to necessarily respect Brian Hoyer. It's different for everybody. And like we said, these aren't going to tell the whole story, but these numbers here in particular are what we're talking about here.
One more thing.
Was there anything else you want to add?
One more thing. Jim Harbaugh used to say, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And Brian Hoyer's getting better. Cam Newton's getting worse. Cam Newton was bad last year. He got beat up. They stopped running him as much. I'm not so certain about Cam Newton's future. I think he may have peaked. We'll see. I'm not so certain. I'm not so certain I would take Cam Newton over Brian Hoyer in the future, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah. It definitely, it's definitely worth taking a look, and I'm definitely excited just to see what we have in Hoyer this year. It's funny that you said are you still on that path of 9 wins?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Starting week 1, interestingly enough, Carolina at home. I think the Niners can win that game. I think Carolina's really in flux. They won 6 games last year. I wouldn't be surprised if Ron Rivera gets fired after this season. Can win. I'm picking 9 games. I'm picking 9 wins.
Yeah,
man.
That's awesome.
A lot of people forget that Ron Rivera was on the hot seat the year that they made the playoffs that year. The Niners beat them. They were ready to fire Ron Rivera mid-season there. And they went on a nice little streak. They got out there, and then boom, Ron Rivera's job is saved. And they go back to the Super Bowl after that. I mean, so Ron Rivera by no means is safe. Cam Newton is not safe. I'm not sure if Cam Newton was drafted by the current GM that's there in Gettleman. I think Gettleman was there cleaning up the mess, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't hold me to it. But Cam Newton has got to be able to perform better. I mean, again, they didn't make the playoffs this year, so the numbers in this article are very, very accurate for what he did just this last year. 54.4 completion percentage, 3,944 yards, 7 yards attempt, which isn't bad, 21 touchdowns and 14 picks. That's nothing to write home to mom about. So
Colin Kaepernick was better.
Yeah. Yep.
No question.
Absolutely, Cap was better than Cam last year. And so those are the kind of things that people are gonna, say, well, you can't do that, you can't do this, but those numbers don't lie. And you know, people say, oh, well, people drop passes. Look at the supporting cast. Everybody has injuries. Everyone drops passes. You have to stop making excuses and look for things for what they are, not how you can manipulate them and make it work to your benefit, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the back end of our schedule is really going to help us as well.
Yeah,
there's a lot of winning games there. I think the only part that we'll get hurt with is the travel back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast to the East Coast. If Shanahan, because Shanahan already says I like to come home and keep these guys with their family. So I don't even know if they're going to stay over if they're just going to do that travel. And that worries me a little bit, that little stretch, Washington back to San Francisco, back to Philly, I think it is, or vice versa with Philly and Washington. But after that, I think there's a lot of winnable games in there. And our offense should be clicking by there. I think our offense takes off by the end, like mid-season to the end of the season. So I think that should be good if Hoyer can stay healthy. And that's what this all boils down to, is Hoyer staying healthy.
Yeah,
absolutely. I actually like Matt Barkley. I thought he played really well last year when he came in for Hoyer. I don't know. I mean, first of all, there was the Niner game that we all saw. Barkley was surprisingly good. But then if you go back, if you have Game Pass, he played a game against the Packers after that. And he threw 2 picks and the Bears lost. But I want to say that Barkley threw only about 3 bad passes the whole game. If you watch that game, he's on point. He was really good in that game. If Hoyer gets hurt, I don't think the season all is lost. I think Barkley's pretty good. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I told people that Barkley's my underdog to actually win the starting quarterback competition. I think preseason will be telling. I think that he's more prepared to play in a pro-style offense. People have to forget the Chip Kelly years, because what he did in college was pro-style offense. And then he's drafted by the one guy who's running only spread shit. It just didn't work. It didn't work for him, and I think it set him back a lot. And I think Barkley is definitely more capable. I think he has a better arm. And I think with time and confidence, I think he'll be a better quarterback than the likes of Brian Hoyer, for sure.
I know for a fact that the Packers were extremely impressed by Matt Barkley after that game late in the season. They were extremely impressed.
Yeah, he's a good guy. But listen, man, Grant, I don't want to hold you up much longer, man. Thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to drop or anything you want to plug? Are you working on anything else that you want to tell people about?
Nah, no shameless plugs for me. I appreciate you having me on the show anytime. This is a lot of fun.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Nick, you want to go ahead and take us out, man?
No, again, thanks for – yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, make sure that you let people know where to find us and all that good stuff. That's all. Go ahead, bud.
Okay, yeah. So, Grant, appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining us. Hope to have you on again. You know, we'll do a mid-season check-in if that'll be good with you. But really appreciate it. And, guys, if you don't follow us, make sure you follow Grant Cohn. It's at Grant, C-O-H-N. Make sure you give him a follow as well. You can find us at Nothing But 9 ERS on Twitter, Nothing But Niners on Facebook, which is all spelled out, Nothing But Niners. Same as Instagram, Nothing But Niners. Snapchat is Nothing But 9 ERS. But most of all, you can follow up with us on YouTube and check us out on our website at nothingbutniners.com. So, but other than that, guys, above all else, stay faithful. We out.